everyone. Everyone? Anyone? If anyone actually sees this, my name is a profile name. Hello. And today I'm going to be doing a moderately deep dive into bulb pattern locks. I can't really call it a deep dive because I'm only going to be covering versions that have the buttons on the front of the bulbs versus writing to the patterns from the back end as well as reading the pattern from the back end. There's a myriad of ways to do that, but it's not as straightforward, so hopefully that'll be something for the future. I also don't think I could call it a shallow dive for hopefully obvious reasons. I'll be covering three main bulbs today. First is your classic pattern lock. You input the pattern, you get a positive output. In this case, it is a lit lamp. And then I will be doing a multiple answer version. Same thing, but there's multiple answers. Whoa, you probably didn't guess that. And lastly, a one that has a random answer that is resettable. I will also be talking about how I read this version with a binary to hex conversion and kind of talking about how I can explore that idea a little bit further. I will be explaining how these work. There is a world download if you want to follow along. Because this applies to everything else I'll be discussing today, I want to first discuss how to read pattern locks with the copper bulbs. The way you typically read these types of locks is with torches and repeaters. Torches will be on the back end of any positive output, and then repeaters for zero inputs. If you do anything to change the pattern at the front from the correct answer, this line will be on, forcing the output torch to be off. It's like a great big AND gate. You can do the same thing with bulbs by putting in your pattern and then placing the bulbs to all be off when the pattern is correct. Same thing, if I do anything to mess with the pattern, then this line, this blue line, will be on and the output torch will be off. Copper bulbs don't need support blocks, so it can make it a little bit nicer for when you're stacking up your inputs. At this size, there isn't a big difference between the torch and repeater version and the bulb version, but as this gets taller, the diagonal will continue to stick out further and further. Whereas this is as deep as it's going to get, basically no matter what the size is. So it's kind of nice. First you have your input bulb, then you're going to have a comparator followed by an observer, your output bulb, your comparator to read your output bulb, and then your AND gate line and your output. The reason you need both the comparator and the observer is because bulbs actually have four states that observers can see, and that is powered on, powered off, and off. So if you could see, as I am interacting with the front bulb, the back bulb is moving actually twice as fast as the front bulb, unless there's only a 1 tick impulse. And the reason you can't just have the comparator is because with this scenario, this back bulb is going to move at a fourth of the speed. So every 4 times we'll get back to being in sync. You need both the front end and the back end to toggle at the same rate, whether or not they're in sync like these two would be, or out of sync like these two. Here we have your classic pattern lock. If your pattern's wrong, your output's off. It's that exciting. Boom. Whoa. Let me show you the cross section of this. Not bad size-wise. Worth noting is you can also do this with levers. That's the cross section for the levers. And if you want to like hide it in a base or something, you can do waterlogged blocks. Let me put the answer for that in. I can remember. I know it's a swirl. Is this it? Aha. There we go. It's a little bit bizarre, but I thought it was interesting. The cross section for that looks like this. Fortunately, I have to have 2 observers there, which means they're out of sync tick-wise, but oh well. The way that you put your pattern in is you make your pattern, then you place the bulbs to all be off. Same thing like I showed you in the intro, but I wanted to demonstrate with the actual ones. And then you do your reading circuit, which will be the comparators and these blue lines. Here it is as a 15 by 15. Past an 8 by 8, you do have to have a repeater between your horizontal and vertical read lines. But other than that, nothing else needs to change for up to a 15 by 15. And here we have our multi-answer version. This is a version I hope to build in a game somewhat soon. So it was actually the first one that I built. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more involved than your one answer version, but the concept is the same. You have your input, and then you're going to take that input, feed it into some bulbs that you're going to read for the pattern. This case, instead of having a redstone line so that it didn't interact with these note blocks directly, we have rails going into an observer and then a bulb here going into this AND gate line. Because I am taking the answer or putting the input through the first answer and then toggling the next answer and then the next answer sequentially, I have to read the answers in between the different layers. So that means you need more space and you have to have air gaps in between them. Otherwise, you couldn't have these rails. Those are filling the air gaps. If I come over here, I'll show you the several different sizes of what the cross sections can look like. Here we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which starts to get really ridiculous. But that took me way too long to figure out. The way that you input the answer for this is you have to put them in one at a time. So you're going to put in your first pattern, and then you're going to come over here and you're going to make sure that all of these torches are off. Now, as you interact with these torches, it's going to mess with these bulbs, sorry, and then these bulbs. So that's why you have to put them in order. So let's make these all be off. Boom, boom. And then when these rails are completely off, you need to make sure that these bulbs are in sync with whether or not the rails are on. Now, anytime you mess with the front end, one of these will turn on and the rail will turn on and this bulb will turn on, activating your AND gate line and overriding your output torch. If I put this back, that all goes back to how it was. At this point, you can put in your subsequent patterns. The second pattern is read by the second set of bulbs, the third by third, etc. Here we have an adaptation-only multi-answer version to show a slight randomization after the last input has been on in, as well as to do sequential inputs. With the other one, you put in the correct answer. It doesn't matter which order you do in, it's going to unlock one of the 3 answers. This one you have to put them in a certain order. And the way that works is by state cells. This state cell between the second and the third answer is overriding this torch. So even if you put in the correct answer and this entire blue line is not activating this torch, this repeater is. Same thing from 1 to 3. So when your first answer gets put in, it will override this state cell, and now you can put the second one in, and likewise with the third. So it just puts it into order. And then the way that I currently have it is when the last torch gets put on, it resets it by refilling in the state cells. And then over here we have kind of a pseudo randomizer, which this is what I put it in to explain it last time. So we have it like this, and then if I were to input into this line, oh look, there's literally also a button. It would change some of the outside blocks to sort of randomize it. You can't get to the center ones, but it at least does something. And now onto the really fun stuff. Here we have my 4x4 bulb pattern locked with a resettable randomized answer. I think this is fun for two reasons. First, because I am displaying the answer. See? I think it would be great for any sort of speed-based game. The main reason, behold, the torch of victory has been lit. The main reason I find this fun is because of how I am reading the information and what that means like for other potential games with a bulb display. You see, in these two pattern locks, the Redstone very successfully knows whether or not the pattern is correct. See? It is not correct. It is correct. It doesn't, however, know anything about the pattern itself. This one, I'm actually using binary, so the lit lamps are ones and the unlit lamps are zeros, binary, and then I'm converting it to hex so that there are 16 different unique codes for each of the rows. So in the top row, if we do 1, 2, 4, and 8, when we turn it to hex, we're going to have a, my brain is not working, 13 at the top. Here we go. And 13 for the other side as well, because the patterns are currently matching. Then we're going to have a 3, and then a 4, and then a 10. So 3, 4, 10. 10. While I've not gone beyond pattern locks with this concept, I do show how to read bigger versions later on if somebody else wanted to play around with them. I don't know. I just think it's very, very exciting, and I hope to play around with it more in the future, but today, sticking with the pattern lock. I showed how to do the binary to hex circuit in the last video, so I won't be covering that here. Timestamp link in the description. The way that the randomized display works is each of the mangrove roots has a dispenser pointing into it with two items. One is a bone meal. This is a void item. If it is selected, nothing happens. And that is because the conditions of something to bone meal is not being met. So it doesn't just spit it out, it just does nothing. And then also a bucket. The bucket is going to be full if the mangrove root is empty, and it will be empty if the mangrove root is full. As each one is selected, there's a 50% chance that nothing will happen or that it will change the status of whether or not the mangrove root is full. Show you that a couple times, leading to a random display. Now the way that it is read is empty buckets are stackable to 16 and bone meal is stackable to 64. So this in a dispenser gives you a signal strength of 1. If you look into this one, we have the empty bucket and the bone meal. Whereas if the bucket is full, because it is not stackable, you get a greater signal strength of 2 in this case. Then you can fade it out and go into your binary to hex converter. Now this one is inverted, so instead of reading directly from the converter, you have to invert it and read that side. And then you have it go into this comparison circuit. The front end can be easier to read or harder depending on, ooh, don't hit anything. Okay, you didn't. Depending on what you choose. Pale oak leaves, that one took the lever out. Okay, the pale oak leaves are a lot harder to read than like the mangrove roots, as are the cherry leaves. Cherry leaves are quite difficult. So We have empty, empty, full, full, but as you can see, it's kind of hard to see. Spruce leaves are quite easy to see, far more than even the mangrove roots. And then grates are also super, super, super easy, but the visibility is so high that you can see the dispensers behind it. You can also do powdered snow and glass in front of it. Glass being so that with the powdered snow, no powdered snow would be, there would be no block, that you would be able to touch the dispenser. So you need glass, and that's super obvious. You can also make it be lit and unlit by having observers look at your lamp, whether or not the leaves are full. I'm starting to place the lamps that are corresponding to the full ones, so I can make sure to remember to keep them in sync, because if they get out of sync, you have no way of being able to read the stuff. So yeah, now anytime the status of the leaves change, the bulb will change as well. In between our answer display and our input display, we have the aptly named comparison circuit, which is comparing the two sides. We have 8, 8, 14, 14, 13, 13, and 7, 7. Those are all equivalent, which means the torches are off, the blue line is off, and the output torch of victory is on. If we come over here, I will show it a little bit better because we have a single layer. Here we have two comparators, each with the output of 13. This comparator is comparing its input to this comparator's output, and vice versa. If this comparator's output is greater than this comparator's input, it will not, this comparator will be shut off. That is what the comparison mode does. Yeah, we have 13. All right. So if and only if both sides are the same, will both torches be off, allowing this line to be off and the output torch of victory to be on. There is, however, a problem. If we have 1, 0, the numbers are not equivalent, of course, and so it makes sense that our torch of victory is not on. If we have 2 zeros, however, let me do that the right way. If we have 2 zeros, however, we don't have an output to begin with to compare to. So the torches are just on by default. So the way that you get around that is there's another little circuit, kind of, I don't know if you can call it a circuit. It's like a sub-circuit right here, that if the input is 0, then this torch is on, and it's going to override this side's torch, and the same thing over here. Only one side is 0, and they're not equivalent, and the line gets turned on. Both are 0. Both torches are being overridden, which means this line is off, and this torch is on. If you're wanting your display and your input to be a little bit further apart, you're going to want to do some data transfer. You can transfer it in a hex signal if you only are going to go a little bit, or you can do binary. Now this can go a lot further, but I just did it this far. Here we have a checkerboard pattern of dust and barrier blocks so they can be seen easily. That is translating this information to over here and then into hex and then invert it, because I was doing the inversion version. I was originally going to show you with rails like this, but I could not for the life of me figure out how to place rails here and rails, like stupid barrier blocks, here without changing how the rail was laid out. I think there are ways to be doing it. I don't know it. Right now, if the rail is on, the bulb will be on, and if the rail is off, the bulb will toggle to off. So that's another way to do it. That's a little bit less laggy, but I don't know how to do it with all of the stuff. I guess you could alternate between rails and dust, making sure you're not using full blocks for the dust. You can also data transfer via with Hexstone, and there's multiple ways to do it, but this gets you a little bit further than some of them. What this is, I forget what this is called, but you have a fade line over here and another fade line over here. With one, only the first repeater is on, and so you're going to fade from 15 down to 1, like that, from that. Whereas these two are both 15, so the last repeater is on, and you get a 15, and then this one is 6. So the 6th repeater is on, and then you're going to fade from 15 down to 6, and I guess this one's 13. So the 13th repeater will be on, and then it will fade 15, 14, 13. That is one of the ways that you can transfer hex. It's quite limited because you have to go all 15 blocks, but I thought I'd show. This is 5x5. The 5x5 was dumb. I wanted to try, but because you could only do the binary to hex conversion for 4 of the layers, and then you had to like weave the 5th block in between the other stuff to compare it. That's what all the magenta is. It's stupid, and I kind of just left it in the video if people wanted to see it in the world download. And now we get to the more conceptual side of things. And I do warn you that I mean conceptual. Everything from this point out is concept and or ridiculous, but I think it was interesting, so I wanted to put it in. I wanted to take this idea where I have a display that I am reading through binary means and then translating it to signal strength. I wanted to take this idea, but make it bigger. In this video, I go up to a 10 by 10. You can get bigger than that, but it just gets increasingly more complicated. Even the 10 by 10 is utterly ridiculous. Slightly more practical, here we have a 6 by 6 that I'm going to show the first step with. The first thing that you have to do is separate the different rows, just like with the multiple answer version. In fact, over here, where I showed all the different slices for separating the rows, work for this. So we have 6 rows of observers with space in between them. That allows us to make a checkerboard pattern of bulbs. If the bulb is below the observer triggering it, you just have to have a redstone test. And then a checkerboard of comparators reading from the bulbs. Now, if there were 64 unique signal strengths, which is what you would need to read a 6-digit binary number, at that point you could just slap on your converter and call it good. There's not. 16 is your max. 16 signal strengths is your max. But you can separate the two sides. So here we're switching to a 7 by 7 to demonstrate this. And I wanted to do a 7 by 7 so I could show both a 4-digit conversion and a 3-digit conversion. What we have here is we have the two sides separated. And the way that we did that is by, you see the checkerboard of comparators. We have observers looking at the side of the comparators, and then observers looking at the first row of observers. You can see they're just all nestled in there looking towards the center. So this is the 4th one from this side, and this is the 3rd one from this side. What that does is that takes, say, this bulb right here, and it puts it to here. If we turn this one on, this bulb is now on. So we're going to be translating the same information from the front display to the back, separate it into 2 sections. From there, that gives us enough space to put in the binary to hex conversion, which, once again, not describing, there's a link in the video. Here we have them all completed. Now, what can you do with a display that you can read via signal strengths and have 14 different signal strengths that tell us what the display is? Not entirely sure, which is why I call this conceptual. I will show another way to do a multiple answer lock in a little bit, but for the most part, I'm not entirely sure what all this could be useful for. On this side, we have 1, 2, and 4. So the right side will have, well, right, the east side will have 5 on it, and the west side will have 3. Wow, so exciting. Now, you don't necessarily have to do the true binary to hex conversion. You can get unique signal strengths if you just want different unique signal strengths with a little bit less delay and space by reusing some of the barrels. So as you can see here, this row of barrels and this row of barrels is being used by 2 different comparators. There is one major downside to this, and that, I'm not sure why I have this on, and that is that the numbers are out of order. On this side, we have 1, 2, 4, nice little order. Then on this side, we have 2, 4, 1. And that's because the barrel with 2 signal strength in it is being read by this comparator and going into the first slot. And the one with 4, which is this barrel's first number, is this side's second number. So you're still going to get unique signal strengths. They're just not going to be in order if you were trying to read it with binary from the front end. So, major downside there. As you can see, this one is 4 by 4. So the lowest number we're going to get to is 8, since I have 15 here. Now, if you put a lectern here with 8 signal strength, this would be 0. But I want it to have the default number be greater than 0, because that gives me what I call a fade line. We come over here, let me turn these off real quick. We have a fade line where we can go from 8 to 1 and get a lot of information without any additional comparators. That's one of the nice things about not using all 15 signal strengths, is you can have fade lines. The less amount, the fewer signal strengths that you are needing in your circuit, the more space you can spread things out without delay. So the way this works is, this is a different version of doing multiple answers. Honestly, it's not as practical, but I was super excited to show it, so I'm showing it anyways. It is a different way to do your multiple answer lock. And it's done with signal strength. As you can see, I have a comparator reading from this line, and then another comparator subtracting from it, and then I have 1. That is because I put in the proper pattern at the front, the chirpy little face, and then I'm making this barrel strong enough that it subtracts this to 1. If the signal strength is too low, then this torch is going to be on, and if the signal strength is too great, then this repeater would be on, and they both feed into that dust right there. And any of these torches or repeaters are on, then this line would be activated and this dust would be off. Then the barrels are a little bit more annoying to use than lecterns. So for the other ones that I didn't have to put something on, I switched to lecterns. So I will show you, let's say this has the same top row. You just have to make it be 1. And then this dust is actually off. It's just that this one is giving it 15. So you can see it's 14. You know that it will be off, because otherwise it would all be 15. Now, like I said, you can fit 3 different answers, 1, 2, and 3, without any sort of comparator delay. And then if you wanted to keep it going, you could, that is not the right thing, you could invert the signal and have 3 more things. I didn't bother making them all the way down because I was just going to demonstrate that. Over here, I have an 8x8 version. When you have the 8x8, you no longer have any fade lines. So your reading is going to be a dust, block, comparator, dust, etc., etc. Here we have it. Going a couple more times. But it's the same concept. You're going to make this, if you have the right pattern, you're going to make this strong enough that this is only a 1, right? Which means this dust is off. There's 2 different places reading to it. When you are doing it with all 16 different signal strength, you are going to mess with zeros though. So if whatever your answer is gives you a 0, you're going to change compares the signal strength checking circuit to this, just a repeater. Any amount of signal strength here, and the repeater will be on. So that's it with a 4x4. Look at this insanity. I wanted to show the 2 different versions of a 10x10, one with the sequential. This is the same as those over there. One with the sequential toggled slots, and one with the signal strength slots. As you can see, once you get to this size, it's just 2 different levels of ridiculous. These have 2 to the 600th combinations, because there's 6 different phases, and then I made them sequential. You can see up here you have the state cells I showed earlier. So the first slot is in, just this. I will tell you how ridiculous this is. If you were to have the pattern written out like this and type in the pattern all 6 times on the 10x10 display to open a door that you could, in theory, you could only open through this lock. That was on an obsidian room. You probably could get through it quicker by punching out the obsidian with a bare hand. Not even just in creative, in survival. Because I timed myself typing in the stuff. It took like 10 minutes, which is about the same as breaking 2 obsidian. But yeah, just in case you need this many. There we go. Put the number up. A lock with that many combinations. There you go. And then it will unlock your chest. Hey!